Hurricane Matthew is barreling towards the east coast of the United States. It's strengthened to a Category 4 storm, and the U.S. National Weather Service says it could be the most powerful storm to hit northeast Florida in more than a century. Governor Rick Scott has warned it could cause catastrophic devastation. Let's go to Steve Mort, who's live for us in Orlando. Steve, where is the eye of Hurricane Matthew now, and when is it expected to make landfall on Florida's coast?
Yes, the eye of the storm is around somewhere between 50 and 80 kilometers from the Florida coastline right now, having passed over the Bahamas, Grand Bahama Island, over the course of the evening local time here. We understand now, according to the latest track from the National Hurricane Center, that the hurricane has taken a little jog to the east, which is quite good news, especially for those of us here inland. That means that we may see slightly less wind, but a lot of rain. But for those people on the coast that are going to take a glancing blow from this major hurricane, it could be devastating. And that is expected to happen sort of within the next few hours or so. And then that eye is going to move up the coast to another major population center, Jacksonville, where more mandatory evacuation orders are in place. You know, 1.5 million people have been under mandatory evacuation order here in this state. It's a heavily populated part of Florida along the coastline, a lot of desirable properties, and the governor and other local officials here have been telling people now for a couple of days to make sure they get out.
President Barack Obama declared a state of emergency, and as you mentioned, their evacuations are ongoing. But are most people listening to those orders, to those evacuation orders?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, we have seen quite a lot of people paying heed to those evacuation orders. Here in Orlando, we've seen quite a few places open their doors as official shelters. They're often schools or other government buildings that are made to withstand severe weather. And what we know is that only a handful of those locations here in Orlando have room left. Hundreds of people have been taking to those shelters, many of them from coastal communities of Florida, and also those inland that live in less structurally sound buildings like mobile homes, that kind of thing. They've been going to those shelters as well to ride out this storm. But we do know, though, according to state officials, that many people that live on those barrier islands, those thin slivers of island that make up much of the coastline of Florida, did elect to stay. And if they were under a mandatory evacuation order, which they probably were, then that means that emergency services will not be able to get to them if they run into trouble. They're going to focus on getting to places where people have evacuated to. So that was the warning from officials here to people. If they didn't get out, then they were going to be on their own. And it seems that thousands of people chose to stay in place.
And what's likely to happen over the next day or so as Matthew continues to make its way up the coast?
Well, we do know that several thousand National Guard troops have been activated here in Florida to help in the search and rescue effort. President Obama, as you mentioned, declaring a state of emergency, which frees up those federal resources to help state and local officials when the sort of light of day comes up and the full extent of the damage that's been wrought on the coastline can be seen. But then as far as the forecast is concerned, well, it's a head-scratcher. We see the storm moving up the coast, moving out into the Atlantic, and then sort of doing a circle shape and coming back to hit Florida possibly as a tropical storm or a weaker hurricane towards the end of next week. So, towards the beginning of next week. And that means that places like Miami or Palm Beach may see a second go-round from Matthew. It's a little bit far out to talk about that at the moment, but that seems to be the consensus of many of the models, and that'll certainly add to the problems of those people on the coastline.
Steve Mort in Orlando, thank you for that update.